Hello, I'm Pip Courtney. Welcome to a new series of A Taste of Landline and the incredible solar greenhouse in the desert.
It's not just the first for Port Augusta, this is the first in the world.
We look at pulses or legumes and Australia's medicinal honey.
Over millions of years of bees making honey, it's the only food that actually can't be spoiled.
Hello, I'm Tim Lee. These are pulses or legumes. We don't grow a lot of them in Australia, although that's starting to change. For these ancient grains will be vital in how we help feed a hungry planet. For Western consumers, pulses have long been little more than an occasional blip on their dietary radar. In fact, many still struggle to tell you what pulses are, let alone think of eating them.
There's only 1 in every 20 Australians are eating pulses regularly, and what we need to do is be eating them at least twice a week for the health benefits, and ideally half a cup every day to see good health benefits.
Pulses are the newest ancient superfood because the benefits of this amazing food are just starting to gain attention.
Pulses are grains such as chickpeas, faba or broad beans, field peas, lentils, lupins and mung beans. They're all legumes, meaning the seeds grow in pods. Nutritionally, they're so good, they're dubbed superfoods and seen as so important to the planet that the United Nations has made 2016 the International Year of Pulses.
2016 is International Year of Pulses. Can I celebrate with some carrots and hummus, please?
Creating awareness is very important, particularly in the Western world, right, where we have very low consumption. So in Australia, where it's only 3.7 kilograms per person, consumption is actually quite low.
That's almost half the global yearly average of 7 kilos per person.
India, on the other hand, they're consuming pulses every day, right? So they don't have an awareness issue, as you point out. That tends to be more of a Western issue, the developed world, where we've stopped eating pulses like we used to many, many years ago.
Over 3 decades, Vincent Sequeira has seen the steady rise in the volume and variety of Australian-grown pulses.
Australia is one of the largest producers of red lentils and coriander seed and chana dal, things like that. Chana dal is a byproduct of chickpea. And Australia is exporting currently these products in large scale, including they are now exporting red lentils back to India.
His specialist Indian grocery store in Melbourne gives an idea of the vast array of these grains, both local and imported. The business also cleans and sorts grains. In this case, Australian rice.
And in India, I think a large community is still purely vegetarians. And without pulses, there's no other proper food. Traditionally, they always had some kind of lentils, pulses, or chickpeas. That has been their traditional diet.
For Australian pulse growers, India is the most important market, accounting for about 70% of annual production of chickpeas and lentils. For many cultures, these ancient grains have been a staple. More recently, science has confirmed pulses have some amazing benefits to human health.
The health profile of pulses is just off the map. It's fantastic. Very high levels of important proteins, anti-cancer properties, anti-obesity properties, and more and more research that's done around the world is bearing that out. We also see a cultural evolution from consumers being previously very hedonically driven, so very driven by taste, particularly in Australia, to being much more interested in health and wanting to eat everyday foods that are healthy as well as taste good. So that's where pulses are really coming into their own.
and they can help address an alarming trend in the Western world.
Australia, unfortunately, is catching up with the United States as one of the most obese countries on the planet, and pulses are part of the solution.
Pulses have a good effect on our tummies and blood.
It's an excellent plant-based protein source. It's also high in fibre, B vitamins, including folate, and the important fibre that's in there is soluble fibre, which is why it has that cholesterol lowering effect. So all those attributes make it a great choice for health. In a developed sense, in developed nations, where we're really burdened by obesity and chronic disease.
Leading the charge is the fine dining sector, which in recent times has propelled grains such as quinoa from obscurity to favoured fare.
People are seeing them more in restaurants and cafes.
We're seeing food magazines picking recipes using pulses more so. We're seeing them used on cooking shows more so. That really helps drive awareness and helps consumers pick them up at the supermarket and use them at home.
Mackenzie's Foods in Melbourne, one of Australia's oldest family-owned food manufacturers, is seeing the changing dietary trend firsthand.
So most people tend to use them in soups and casseroles and stews and slow cooking, but we're trying to encourage people to actually use them more in salads and snacks.
So we're seeing an uptick in demand for the raw material that we're producing, and if you look at across the supermarket shelves, there is a lot more products that you can buy today in the supermarkets that have some degree of pulse inclusion. The hummus segment is quite enormous. You walk into a supermarket and just have a look at the array of hummus.
Surveys show that many Australians still know little about pulses and how to cook them.
One of the main impediments is that consumers don't know how to cook with them, how easy they are to cook with. There's this myth that they take quite a long time to cook and you've got to soak them the night before and then they take hours to cook, but that's not the case. So we're really trying to get new recipes out there to consumers, lots of usage ideas, and that seems to be driving more consumption.
And there remains one sometimes embarrassing side effect of eating them: flatulence.
The kind of worst offenders, if you like, if you consume them for the first time in your life for a few days, you'll have some bloating. But after a really short period of time, you don't tend to have the same problems as the microbiology in your gut sort of changes in a positive way.
Scientists are working to identify pulses that cause little, if any, flatulence or bloating. Queensland firm Blue Ribbon is even negotiating with a Japanese firm to make pet food with mung beans that don't cause pets to emit nasty odours. It's all part of the new frontier for these ancient grains.
Yeah, I think pulses will definitely be a staple in Australia. There's no doubt about that. The health profile is just fantastic, and what you can do with them and the diversity of pulses available will definitely mean that they're a significant force in our diet.
Well, we think it's going to be one of the big food trends worldwide.
Hello, I'm Kerry State. A high-tech greenhouse that could be a game changer in global food production has opened in South Australia. The futuristic-looking facility is producing thousands of tonnes of tomatoes with just sunlight and seawater. It's a vision many thought wouldn't get off the ground. But 300 kilometres north of Adelaide, the future of food production is looking very bright from every angle.
This is a very, very special project. It's not just a first for Port Augusta, this is a first in the world.
This 127-metre high glowing centrepiece and the solar energy it captures are the keys to keeping everything running below.
If I split it roughly, half of it goes into just heating needs for the greenhouse. That's a big cost, usually. About 30 to 35% goes into making water, and then the rest is for electricity production.
A solar boiler at the top of the power tower, as it's known, produces steam, which drives a turbine to create electricity. Any unused heat is transferred to a thermal energy storage tank, the biggest in the southern hemisphere. Indeed, everything here is big. And it's a nice change for Rainier Volterbeek, who has worked in pilot greenhouses until now.
Yeah, occasionally you need to pinch yourself. It is obviously it's amazing to see that that what you think could work actually works.
Some of the original design has been tweaked. The pilot plant had curved parabolic mirrors, which looked good but were hard to clean. So when it was scaled up, the team opted for flat, everyday mirrors.
The mirrors are actually just normal bathroom mirrors. Obviously the size, I don't know how big your bathroom is, but they're 2 square meters each. But yeah, they're ordinary mirrors.
Which brings us to the other major ingredient that keeps this operation afloat. Salt water, piped from the nearby Spencer Gulf. This is used for heating, cooling and irrigation. But before it can water crops, it needs to be converted to something more palatable. And that's where the stored heat in the big tank and this thermal desalination unit come in.
Seawater goes into this unit. We're extracting heat from the big heat storage tank that basically starts evaporating the seawater. That seawater vapor, if you condense that becomes fresh water.
And what goes into this other tank, this smaller tank next door?
The waste heat from this process, which is normally dumped into the ocean, we can actually reuse for greenhouse heating. So we pump that waste heat into the second heat storage tank.
After the desalination process, the leftover salty water is cooled and diluted in a big pool before being released back into the Spencer Gulf. This is where the fresh water is kept. Now, it's undercover to keep contaminants out, but the pond holds 25 million litres. And every day, on average, 1 million comes in and about the same is pumped out and piped to the greenhouses. This is Adrian Simpkin's world. He spent more than 2 decades running tomato greenhouses in Europe and North America before joining Sundrop as head grower. And he says the desalinated water is far from second-rate.
It's almost the perfect water. So you're taking all of the salt out of it, there's no disease aspects, it's very pure, and we're able to enhance it with the nutrition that the plants require. Okay, Kerry, so this is where a grower should spend most of his time.
As the boss in here, it's Adrian's job to keep on top of these fast-moving plants, which grow around 30 centimetres a week. And that means plenty of hours up high checking on the crop as it flowers.
So if we make mistakes up here, then we'll see it for the next 8 weeks.
So you pull these out every 12 months, but it is a perennial plant, so why do you do that?
Yeah, that's correct. The way that we push these plants, I liken it to a 100-year-old person. You're not running a marathon like you used to.
There are 4 greenhouses identical to this one. And almost 2 years after construction started, they're all producing at full capacity, with Sundrop expected to deliver at least 15,000 tonnes of tomatoes a year.
I think when you look at population growth and water shortage, we need to be able to produce food in a very efficient manner, maximise the amount of space that's available and minimise the impact on the environment when it comes to water usage. So this project, it really is, a big step forward.
While they had to be smart when it came to sourcing water, one thing there's no shortage of, as long as enough leaves are removed to expose the crop, is light.
The more light you can give plants, the better they grow, the better they taste. So we're in a location that has about 320 sunshine days a year, which is pretty good. And from that perspective, the site has worked out really well. What we have is really hot summers, and those are sometimes challenging, but we managed to cool the greenhouses down to a temperature where the plants continue to be happy and grow well.
While the environmental savings are significant, many thought the financial costs would make this project unviable. But the boss says even though the initial infrastructure investment of around $200 million is more than what a traditional greenhouse operator would spend, it pays off down the track.
Fossil fuels can make up probably up to around 50% of their operating expenses. We bring that right down. And when you look at what we're depreciating, the cost of this asset every year, it's much lower than what they're spending every year on fossil fuels. So there's a significant saving.
To achieve that significant saving, the company first needed a significant investment to be able to expand. That came from private equity firm KKR, which is contributing $100 million. And something that helped convince the global giant to get on board the Sundrop train is the 10-year contract the grower has secured with retailer Coles.
It is unusual in the sense that it's the longest agreement we have in horticulture. It gives them security broadly about what they'll be paid, and it gives us security about the volumes that they're going to grow.
Sundrop is growing just one variety of truss tomatoes, and everything it produces goes to Coles. The retailer's head of fresh produce says what comes out of this greenhouse won't saturate the market or push smaller tomato growers out, but it will affect prices.
Tomatoes are one of our top 10 selling lines in the supermarket, and they're growing very quickly. Particularly in winter, there is a gap between supply and demand, and what Sundrop will do is fill that gap. What I would say is in winter, my personal belief is that customers have to pay too much for truss tomatoes, and what Sundrop will do will be allow us to give better value to customers, but also to provide a great return to suppliers through that period as well.
The water may not start out as fresh, but thanks to a lot of clear thinking, what leaves this groundbreaking greenhouse is. And a light bulb moment that some saw as laughable is now looking a lot more lucrative.
You need to be an optimist. You need to think about what you have and not so much on what you don't have. And I think this is a great example, right? Like, not a lot of people thought you could grow veggies in the desert, but I think you can. If you think smart about it, there is a solution.
Mutton delivery. The most exciting thing is when you go to a restaurant and you see your product. That's probably the highlight of my farming life, I reckon.
G'day, I'm Sean Murphy. It used to be fed to cows because of its bitter taste, but Manuka honey, or jellybush as it's known here, could be the saviour of Australia's honey industry. After years of steady decline, producers may have access to a $1 billion global market, with new research identifying the trees which give Manuka honey its health-giving properties in every Australian state.
In the Northern Rivers region of New South Wales, they're searching for one of nature's miracles. It's a special tree with the nectar that helps produce Manuka honey. Simon Williams has been travelling around Australia for the past year, meeting beekeepers like Mike Howes, searching for leptospermum trees. They're the source of Manuka honey's amazing healing and germ-fighting abilities, and they've created a potential billion-dollar industry in New Zealand.
We're trying to cover a lot of area, a lot of species. There's 86 species. I'd love to get to all of them. If I could identify every species and sample it, that would be great.
It's a 5-year study which is looking at leptospermum trees in every state. Australia has over 10 times more species of the tree than New Zealand. There's nothing new in claims about the healing powers of honey. The ancient Egyptians used it, and before antibiotics, particularly in World War I, it was widely used. But now there's some serious science backing the benefits. At Brisbane's Princess Alexandra Hospital, they've done 2 separate studies on kidney patients, confirming that medical-grade Manuka honey prevents infection as well or better than antibiotics. The growing threat of drug-resistant superbugs has put a fresh focus on Manuka honey.
While drugs can be very useful at times, honey is a really good topical agent that bacteria don't become resistant to. So over millions of years of bees making honey, it's the only food that actually can't be spoiled. So nature has provided this solution for us that we stopped using because of antibiotics. Now that antibiotics are losing their power, we need to look at other solutions, and I think honey is a fantastic one.
Microbiologist Liz Harry heads a research project involving 3 universities, funded by industry and government. They're looking at the unique properties of Australia's Manuka honey.
So what we'd like to know is what particular leptospermum species, if any, are better, or do they have different types of properties? What we might find, for example, is that one type of leptospermum might have a very high antibacterial activity. Honey also has other properties, like healing properties and anti-inflammatory properties. So what we're interested in is whether some of these honeys may do better at the anti-inflammatory and other honeys may be better at antibacterial. Or perhaps there's a few honeys that are best at all 3 of those activities.
New Zealand already has a well-established medi-honey industry. The nation's biggest producer, Comvita, turns over about $100 million a year in medical-grade honey, bandages and dressings. The company says it can't keep up with demand from hospitals and clinics, but is also dealing with a booming appetite for Manuka honey as a culinary product, especially in Asia.
Right now, the culinary prices on very pure Manuka honey has been coming so high that it becomes very difficult to make a commercial decision to dedicate that honey to the medical use.
Comvita is negotiating with Australia's biggest producer, Capilano, to manufacture Manuka medical-grade products here in Australia.
As the growing demand for the medical side of it, that's where it's going to end up. I mean, most of the honey should be heading that way. I mean, it's probably the better use for an antibacterial honey, and it's probably the best value chain for that honey.
The outlook may be bullish for Australia's Manuka honey, but otherwise, the honeybee industry is in decline. In New South Wales, which has nearly half of all Australia's registered beekeepers, there's been a 30% decrease in the number of commercial hives in the last decade.
Microbiologist Shona Blair has spent most of her career working with the honeybee industry, which she says is crucial for 2/3 of Australian agricultural output.
If we don't have bees, we lose a vast amount of the pollination services that are going on.
But according to Shona Blair, the biggest issue for beekeepers around Australia is access to national parks and state forests.
Beekeepers are businesses to run, and if they can't guarantee that they're going to get a honey crop every year, then they can't run their businesses. So if they can't get into the state forests or some sections of national parks, their businesses fall over.
Australian and New Zealand scientists have been collaborating on a chemical fingerprint for Manuka honey to guarantee integrity in the market.
Well, what we're trying to do is fingerprint the honey so we can identify which source they've come from for 2 reasons. So we can say to the consumer, this is a leptospermum honey of a different activity or a different species, and also protect so that the industry isn't being flooded with imports of fake Manuka honeys.
Mike Howes says laboratory tests are especially crucial for informing consumers about different levels of bioactivity in Manuka honey.
Yeah, I think it needs to be rigorous. I think the laboratories that are testing here in Australia have to have their science behind them and know exactly what they're dealing with.
A future honey boom in Australia may not be just about Manuka. New research has also revealed that regular Australian bush honey may also have important health benefits.
Most people now are aware of this thing of your good bugs and your bad bugs in your lower gut. And what we've found that lots of Australian eucalypts will actually push the population in your gut towards more good bugs and less of the bad bugs. So it's quite amazing that just a tablespoon of honey a day will have a really positive effect on your health, because we're now understanding that your gut bugs are so important for everything else that's going on in your system.
New Zealand now has an industry standard for Manuka honey, and its National Honey Association is seeking trademark certification of the Manuka brand. The industry here is watching those developments closely, but Australia's Manuka honey may have some unique characteristics of its own to market to the world.
I think Australia, as we uncover the different types of species of Manuka honey, I think we might find different characteristics with those different honeys, which will make the Australian side of the Manuka story really quite interesting as well.
Well, that's the program. Next week, some food and drink.
40 minutes down the road, beautiful coast, beautiful waters, it's farmed, it's sustainable, it's good for us. They've got everything.
And a big dose of inspiration.
Living in the bush builds a different resilience too.
Blessed is what I see. Yeah, I wake up and thank God every day.
Don't forget to follow us on iView, Facebook and Twitter. Bye for now.